Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Robertson Tirado. Thank you for coming back to my channel. This channel is dedicated to writing and film. Nice to see you again. And today's topic we're going to talk about is time capsule, making our movie a time capsule. I was just watching the film Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, and that movie takes place in New York City, the city I was born, and it actually takes place around the time I was born. And as a kid, I remember how seedy the city was, how much vice it had. It was just like how Robert De Niro spoke about it, how it was dirty. He couldn't stand how everything's so filthy and horrible. But you know, actually, when I look back at that movie, it gave me chills because it was actually a time capsule of the time that I grew up. So when we make our independent films, we can actually pick locations and current events that's happening in our own town or by any seaport that we live by. And this could be a time capsule that we could share in the future, part of an independent movie experience. So making a movie a time capsule is actually not a hard thing because we're just using the environment, and especially if you're making a film, an independent film that's at our present time. We're not making a film that's something that's 30, 40 years before the present time or 30, 40 years in the future. But if we're making a movie current, we could use that as something that we could actually look back at and remember what that moment and how that moment felt. So watching that movie, Taxi Driver, actually gave me chills knowing that that's the world that I grew up in. And so we could look at films the same way. And what I'm going to discuss also is that I just made a small film, and the film is very simply called Chinatown. And with this movie is kind of an experimental movie that I shot in New York City's Chinatown, which is located in Manhattan near the bridge called Manhattan Bridge. And there's another bridge not too far. Everyone, of course, heard it, the Brooklyn Bridge. But that's a little further away. But on the anchorage of the Manhattan Bridge, it actually looks very 1970s kind of rugged and very a little bit seedy. It might not be seedy. I don't want to call the neighborhood seedy, but it has an edge to it that reminds me of the 1970s and the 80s. So what I did was I set up my camera and I did different shots, and you're going to see in this film that I actually use a light source in the dark to kind of give it a contrast and explore light. So this film I'm going to show to you right now after I speak with you is called Chinatown. It's filmed in New York City, and I use a Canon GH5 for it. And what I did was, what's really interesting is that the light source you're going to see is actually Christmas lights. And Christmas lights that's actually shaped like a candle or shaped like I think it's like a dripping crystal. So these are LED lights. So I went to Chinatown and I bought Christmas lights, and I wasn't sure if they would be able to be powered by a 9-volt battery. So I brought them home and I cut the wire, I connected a 9-volt battery, and it actually worked. So what I did was I ran the wire down my sleeve of my jacket to a 9-volt battery with a switch, and then I held the dripping icicle, and that's kind of how I illuminated it. So, and there's another part of the film you're going to see at the end. There's a brick wall, and the brick wall, there's Chinese letters on it, and those Chinese letters actually spell and say search. So the way I did that was I did that in Photoshop and Premiere. And actually my whole goal of making this movie Chinatown was there's no script. It's basically taking my camera, going to a location, and I filmed half of it one day, one night, and then I thought about what will be the story. There's no story, but I had to think about a story. Then I came back, drove down some other streets in Chinatown, and discovered some streets that would work for the story that I just made. And that's a little short film. So a lot of times when you make films, we don't need to, make a whole script and go through so many channels to make a film. Sometimes in order to get ourselves to be better at filmmaking, we can experiment. Just bring your camera to a location, set it up, and on the spur of the moment, improvise a film at that moment. Another little part about making an independent film, there's always a little snag. There's always something that would happen. So little things happened when I made this short film, like the connection for the battery didn't work, and I knew I should bring another connection. I knew I should bring electrical tape. So I didn't bring those things, and then there was a problem. But when there's a problem, you have to improvise. Little things. I started filming this short movie around 11 p.m. 11 p.m. to about 1 p.m. And when I was working there in Chinatown, there was a Chinese restaurant open, and a few of the guys from the restaurant came out to see what was this light illuminating. So that was really cool. But on the side of the Manhattan Bridge, there's a sanitation department, and one guy came out being really tough, and he's like, "Hey, you can't film over here." But I wasn't actually filming it. I was just walking by. So I didn't pay him any mind. I just kept walking and went to another block, because basically, when you have your own camera, you have a tripod, you could film anywhere. You don't need a permit in New York City. Only time you need a permit is when you have trucks and wires and cables and a crane. You know, that would be illegal. But when you have a single camera, or it could be two people even walking on the street filming, there's nothing illegal about that. So that's part of the energy that you feel when you're making a film. And when you do it on improvise, you actually get this new energy and ideas that you didn't even expect. So that's part of making an independent film. You got to try to keep doing it, and you have to experiment. So when you're ready for the time you're going to do something like a feature, you already have prepared for it. You can prepare it, because the main goal for me was to experiment with the light and the dark with my camera, the GH5, to see how it reacts, what are the settings. And a lot of this I did basically by myself. There was no other person helping. It was hard to find someone to help me at that time, because everyone is working so hard in New York City, so it's hard for people to make time, because the next day they have to go to work. So I had to go to work too, but I'm the one suffering, so not them. So they told me if it's in the daytime, they'll do it. But that's part of doing your independent film. In order to get experience, you have to keep experimenting. So that's just a little bit of my info on this topic, making our film into a time capsule that we could revisit years from now and see how our own neighborhood has changed and the vibe has changed, and it will. Everything has changed. So here's the short film called Chinatown. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, let me know. My name is Robertson, Tirado, and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Shadows are moving. The daylight is fading. It takes with it what I want to hold. Will I remember the moments unspoken, hidden beneath amber skies? You must go now. Take hold of all you know.